I call to order the meeting of the Cleveland Heights University Heights City School District Board of Education. Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
Ms. Wright.
Here.
Mr. Posh.
Here.
Mr. Hines.
Here.
Ms. Serini.
Here.
Ms. Lewis.
Here.
So the first thing on our agenda is awards and recognition, and usually we turn that over to the superintendent, but tonight I'm going to do an award and a recognition. And I would like to thank Dr. Brian Williams for all he did for us as serving as the interim superintendent. I know this was a job he wasn't seeking, but he stepped up to the plate when we approached him and asked him, and I think he did it admirably well. So thank you. We have a gift for you. So thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And I guess I'll say something. I appreciate the opportunity, which I've told each of you individually, but I also want to thank our administrative staff at the board, our support staff at the board. I am eternally grateful for all of the support that you gave me during the time that we spent together, and it was an experience, and I needed your support, and I appreciate everything that you did for me during that experience. And quite frankly, you know, it is an honor for me to be able to serve a community that has given so much to me. So I thank you all.
Thank you. Also, I want to welcome Elizabeth Kirby, our new superintendent. This is her first meeting with us, so we're ready to go.
So excited to be here, day 4.
But she's been here a lot, so it doesn't feel like day 4. And the next thing on our agenda is statements from the audience, so I will see if we have any. So we have no statements from the audience tonight, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to consider the consent agenda?
I motion that we consider the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? For everyone in the audience, the consent agenda, this is just a way that we move along our meetings for items that are pretty routine. And on the consent agenda tonight are meeting minutes, personnel, some personnel issues, actions, business services, and finance. So if there's no discussion?
I just want to congratulate the 2 teachers who got married, because I know them. So that's all.
Excellent. Any other discussion?
Yes. And as always, a sincere thank you for the donations. We are blessed with some extremely generous folks in the community, near and far. I noticed that there was a donation in honor of a former coach that came to us from a graduate in Georgia. And I think it just really speaks to the ongoing impact that our staff has for things little and big that really kind of carry on through our lives. And so we're blessed to have wonderful members of the staff who continue to inspire, and we're blessed to have wonderful members of Tiger Nation near and far. So that's that.
I have one question about the quarterly contracts.
Okay.
Scott, that's part of the consent agenda, right?
It is.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Could you explain to us briefly the role that our staff has at Beaumont and Community of Saints?
Let me look at those contracts specifically. Because we do provide services to the non-public schools. So if those are contracts that Supardee.
Health aid and school psychologist is what I'm seeing, and
Yes,
remedial
yes.
tutor.
So they're using so the non-public schools, we are the pass-through agency for non-public dollars. So we get the allocation, and they will often contract services with us to provide services for their students, and then we report all that back to the state as we spend the money. And Supardee is both responsible for the state and federal grants and the non-public schools.
And those funds come into our budget and we know that they're not ours to use from the
Correct.
beginning?
Yeah, so
Okay,
so the
good.
general
I just wanted to
fund
make sure that was
forecast,
clear.
that's a good question. The general fund forecast that you approve does not contain any of those non-public funds. They're kept in a separate fund 401.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? No? Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Okay, jumping down now, we are at the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask Dr. Lombardo to come up and take us through the policy reading.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Paul.
This is the third and final reading of our policy group C. And we did have a couple questions last month, which some of that information was sent on to the board. And that had to do with policy 5136.01. We did run this by legal, and their suggestion, if you look at policy 5136, which is a current policy, does address the personal communication devices. If you recall, the question was, we know students have personal devices, they do use them during the day, and how do we monitor that? And 5136 does talk about students may use them before and after school, during their lunch break, in between classes, as long as they do not create a distraction, disruption, or otherwise interfere with the educational environment. So we do have a current policy, and the advice from legal was that that policy is usually deleted where we wouldn't need 5136.01 because there's a lot of old language and old terms used in that.
Yeah, so I think this is exactly getting at what I was, because I questioned this policy twice. And I think the legal response is spot on. I would propose, and I'm going to need some help from a Roberts Rule order. I mean, how can we take that one policy out? And would it be okay? I mean, the recommendation, I'm looking at the email that you sent. I mean, I'd like to proceed with what the, I'd like to proceed based on the recommendation of the lawyer, which is to remove that one policy and just use just use 5136.
Right, because this is a third reading, you can make a motion to delete that policy as part of our third reading of that policy. So you would make a motion to delete that policy and then accept all the policies.
Yeah, this is for action tonight, so you would just, someone would move to approve all policies except that one specifically.
Okay, so when we get ready to move that, we will do that.
Yep. So the one you wanted to remove is 5130, no.
It's .01.
It's .01, so
With
we
the one with the
keep
long list of-
5136, but we remove 5136.01,
Okay, so do we have any other discussion on the policies?
maybe, but I don't know.
Okay, so do I have a motion to remove policy, which one is it?
5136.01.
50,
So motioned.
thank you. And approve all the others.
Second.
All right. Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Serini?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. Dr. Lombardo, how many more policies do we have to go through?
Well,
Just
the
curious, do we have
exciting
another giant
news,
group coming?
the exciting news is we have an August group of policies, and then we'll have a January group of policies.
Okay,
So they're going to be releasing those shortly here.
okay.
So then we will start our policy review committee up in either September or October.
Okay. Just wondering when we're going to get another giant chunk to read.
I will not disappoint. I will bring in more forward.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Good times.
All right. Moving on to the treasurer's report. Mr. Gaynor. Or do you have anything else, Liz? Is that the only thing for the superintendent's report?
That's all I have right now.
Okay. So, Mr. Gaynor,
All
treasurer's
right.
report.
So we have the five-year forecast for you, not for approval, but for discussion tonight, for a couple of reasons. So we have some changes to the five-year forecast, some substantive changes And one change that still has some unresolved questions. So what I've given to you tonight is, and this is out under board docs as well, under the content, you have a 5-year forecast that says August 2019 at the top left. You have one that says August 2019 excluding student wellness funds, student misspelled, sorry there. You have the July 2019 5-year forecast for purposes of comparison, and then you have the assumptions to the August forecast, which actually could apply to either one of these August forecasts. But a couple of things that I want to point out. I guess we'll start with the big one. So if you look at the August 2019 alone 5-year forecast, the top of that, I have highlighted the student wellness and success funds. So we had a question, and that's what caused the second forecast to be created, or the second version, as to whether or not those student wellness funds that we were going to receive of $792,688 in fiscal 20, and then you see, $1,138,672 in 2021, and assume that $1.2 million level thereafter, whether or not that was going to be restricted for any reason. And to be conservative, in case it was restricted and would require us to add additional programming, we had a second version of the forecast created with those dollars excluded. Well, I have some confirmation today from the Ohio Department of Education. And the area coordinator is Jack Naris, who's been around a long time. He's someone we work with regularly. And he as follows says, here's the response. Supplement, not supplant, is not a requirement with the student wellness and success funds. That's a federal requirement, and the state is not imposing that requirement with these new dollars. If your local school district is already spending dollars within the restricted uses of student wellness and success funds, you may shift those expenses to this new funding source. So that's good news. That means that because we do so many things in those regards, although I've not seen the categories, and they say that they'll have something up on the website by the end of the month for us to see there, I'm fairly confident that the things that we provide for our students would fit within those categories, and that we will have access to those funds in the general fund. So the second version of the forecast, then, it really becomes moot. So the one that reads, August 2019 excluding student wellness funds, we can ignore that one. I think at this point it's safe to say.
So what you're saying is that the new funds for student and wellness can be used for program and services which we already provide?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay,
That's
I just want to
correct.
make it very, very
Yes.
clear.
And so I have therefore, in this top version, added that money into the forecast.
Got it.
Yes.
So during our retreat, we used the word restrictive and non-restrictive, these funds that are non-restrictive.
Well, they are designated for a certain purpose, but ODE is saying typically the concern was that they would require us to add additional programs, or programs that we don't already have. Like a lot of times with state and federal grants, they use the supplement, not supplant, and they'll say, we'll give you this money, but you must use it for a purpose other than something you're already doing. And ODE's confirmed today that they're not holding to that we can, if we are doing things that fit within the categories, it's kind of like with the disadvantaged pupil money that we receive through the foundation, through the state. We identify things such as the options program, safety and security. We capture those costs and we report back to ODE that that's how we're spending those funds. It would be the same thing with these dollars. So we would probably capture the costs of social workers in all the buildings, all the things that we really do that we've been proactive about over the years. We can capture those costs and report that back to ODE, that those are the things that we're doing for
With
student
that money,
wellness and
right.
success.
So we have initiatives, though, on the books to, the wraparound services work that we're ready to embark on with Weiss and all those other providers.
Yes.
Have we budgeted for that in this 5-year forecast, or would that be all new spending?
Well, we have budgeted for the actual dollars for the Weiss Institute, the cost of that program, but there's no additional staffing that's assumed in this forecast for those kinds of initiatives. So if there would be, for example, I know a lot of times they will say you should have I almost want to say not a coordinator, but someone in each building who's kind of responsible for wraparound services and those kinds of things. None of that is assumed in the forecast at all. So if the district would decide to do such a thing, then that would be additional cost that we could capture and say that's what this money is for and what is being spent for, but that's not assumed here.
I'm just afraid that we're going to, throw that money at the general fund, and it's just going to be sucked up with all the other expenses that we have, and
That's a legitimate concern. I mean, that's actually what's being proposed here in the forecast. That is being put in here as an offset to the $2.1 million we're losing in additional ed choice dollars. So,
I mean, are we able to restrict the money ourselves?
well, we can, if the superintendent said, or the direction of the board, that we wanted to use those funds for a certain purpose, yes, we would, we could put it aside, we could put it in a special cost center and keep those funds for something else. But we would keep it within the general fund, but we would kind of hold it, I guess.
So in the spirit of Liz just being new, this information is all new to us. I mean, we had to rework the 5-year forecast based on sort of the changes with the state budget. Can staff look at what it would be like if we were able to internally restrict those funds for our use and make sure that they're used for health and wellness?
Are you proposing that because we do have to report back out how we're going to use those funds. So are you saying restrict them in terms of adding additional programming on top of what we're doing, or that we would designate those things we're doing as the...
Okay, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage. I mean, it seems like if those funds are coming in for health and wellness, they should be used for health and wellness.
Correct.
And but I also don't want to tie the hands of staff at this point, especially in a meeting that we're having tonight with this all new information. Can we at least look at what it would be like if we restrict those funds to be only used for health and wellness? Now, maybe what you already said is we have to prove that amount of money is being used for health and wellness.
We do, we must.
So maybe it's a moot issue, but I'm just afraid that someone's going to look at this and it's going to be, oh, well, this is just free money in our 5-year forecast, and
It's not.
we could
Right.
use it for other purposes, and that I'm a little concerned about.
No, absolutely.
No, I
Okay,
think-
I understand your concern.
I think the question is whether this money goes to support things we already do in that category, or whether we take this as gravy and allow us to either expand or add something or deepen something that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do,
Correct.
right?
That's-
It's not as if that money will be used for some other purpose. It has to go towards this designation, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That is correct.
So I think the analysis is more relevant towards, are there specific things we haven't been able to do or haven't been able to plan for as we roll out the wraparound services that we want to add and that now we might be able to? And that's a Liz question, right?
So we'll be looking at that in terms of how we're using those monies currently, right? And how we can take advantage of this opportunity to make sure that it's allocated in a way that makes sense, paying attention and ensuring that we're following the guidelines of the grant as well.
Yeah.
Because my understanding is there are things that the district has done already that's beyond what other districts are doing, and so now there's an opportunity to provide funding for those things from the state perspective, which is great.
Yeah.
So we're kind of ahead of the game.
I think we are ahead of the game for most districts. But, is this an opportunity to see if there's something else we need to do or we want to do for our students?
So, as I was sitting here, getting this all too rare good news from Columbus, and it struck me that the strategic plan that we are currently operating under was so well crafted and has served this district so very, very well. Because it is that strategic plan that drew attention and focus on the need of our greater community, the needs of our greater community that the schools can help to fill. And it is so many of those wraparound services that we have established and that are significantly ahead of the curve. And so I think that this is a nice opportunity for us to recognize the senior staff really in the district that have taken that ball, taken ownership of this important need and really delivered. So I celebrate the vision and the commitment of our senior staff to really make those goals reality. That's the first thing. So that's sort of the good news. The bad news is I really think that we need to view this as a pressure release valve. That we have gotten some really devastating news in this budget right now. And, you know, we have great vision, but we are also at a time when we're going to need to be very, very cautious moving forward about adding. And I just think that we need to be very, very thoughtful about each dollar that we're spending at this point. And I know that we all would agree on that.
Yeah, well, clearly, the elephant in the room that I'm looking at.
Well, yeah, that's perfect leading, right?
Then there's the other highlighted
Then there's
bar.
the other highlighted bar of the 5-year forecast. So, as we've discussed at the retreat and prior, Ed Choice Vouchers, the high school is an Ed Choice designation based on graduation rate, and not the most recent graduation rate, but
2012,
graduation
2013.
rate before Safe Harbor. And so what that did at the last minute, slipped into the biennial budget, was an amendment that allowed for non-public students and private school students at the high school level or going into the high school or going into a high school to take an Ed Choice voucher. So we have, as the enrollment period closed for the month of July, 1,473 Ed Choice vouchers in total, 351 specific to this new provision in the law that was unanticipated and not in the forecast in any way. So 351 vouchers going to various non-public and private schools at $6,000 per voucher. So the line you see now, and at the board's request, you'll remember we've been breaking out all these vouchers in each year, is now this new line called High School Non-Public Ed Choice Vouchers, $2.1 million in fiscal 20 and moving forward. So what that did, and one of the reasons that I placed the student wellness dollars there unrestricted, although they are restricted, as we've said, for student wellness purposes, but can be for student wellness things we're doing, is because if you look into fiscal year 21 now, at the bottom line is a deficit, $737,280 that was in previous forecast. If you look back at July, was a positive $775,000. So this is one of those things that I think we, as we've discussed, we're going to do everything we can do in every means possible to try to see if we can make some changes in this situation that we're in. But nonetheless, we're in the situation now. And this isn't even, where we could say, well, we're going to withhold that money until we figure it out or do what we need to do. This money is directly deducted from our state foundation money, so we never see it.
And it's important to note that
Yes.
these budget numbers also include the commitment to cut $750,000 each year.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
correct.
Right.
So this deficit, is on top of that.
And on top of the fact that this was meant to be a 3-year levy that we already stretched to a 4th year.
Right.
That's correct.
One of the things that gets me so much about this is that as a public school district, we are required to twice a year submit for authorization our 5-year financial forecast. So the state law demands that we run on a 5-year budget to ensure that we can continue to carry out the tasks before us for 5 years. And yet the state doesn't even follow that when it comes to the funding. That, you know, here we had $2.1 million more hijacked from our budget in the dark of night in the final days of a budget process, which for the first time in memory went beyond its usual cycle, that our legislature in Columbus is you know, lacking so much so that they didn't do their job on time. They had to go into extra innings in order to get the budget agreed on. And they take another $2 million without a moment of notice to us. And yet, all the while, insisting that we operate on a 5-year budget. It's hypocrisy in layers.
Well, Dan, it's even worse than that. I mean, this is because of the high school, and because the high school has been earmarked by the state as a failing school solely because of its graduation rate. Okay, I mean, that's important, solely because of the graduation rate. Our graduation rate for the last 3 years has been above the state average. So how can it be a failing school if you're above the state average? I mean, that's the first thing that you got to ask yourself. And then you sort of really go in the nuances on the report card, and you really realize an A in one district is not equal to an A in another district. And this crazy safe harbor provision where we're being penalized for work that was done 4, 5, and 6, actually, no, it's 7, 6, and 5 years ago. I mean, that's what this is all about, because there is an appetite in Columbus to expand the Ed Choice voucher program and basically let people who are not going to be attending our schools anyways get some relief from private school tuition, and that's our way of paying into that at the expense of our kids. I mean, at the expense of our kids, because we don't have any other money source.
And I think it's important to note that going back that far, those kids, the test scores from kids who are now 25 and 26 years old is what's being used to determine our graduation rate. We are getting no credit for the gains that we've made in the last 5, 6 years. If the whole purpose of Ed Choice was to improve school performance, how can you not give credit to school districts like ours who've made great gains in those last couple of years?
And, you know, we're very fortunate. We have got state legislators who represent us, who are fantastic and hardworking and supportive, and, you know, but unfortunately there's just not enough of them. As much as we would all like to clone Janine Boyd, we're still not allowed to do that. But, you know, we are appreciative and hopeful that she will continue to carry the flag for us, and we know that she will do what she can, but, you know, hers is the deep minority party right now, and that is the unfortunate political reality that we are operating under.
So Scott, you, I mean, we did discuss this in the retreat, and we were unsure about whether or not the student wellness money was designated or not designated, so you found that out.
Yes.
But the other issue is we're on a cap.
Correct.
Yes.
Which basically means the $6,000 that we pay out per student is not coming out of state funds, it's coming out of local funds, it's coming out of everybody's property taxes that they pay. But you were gonna go find out to see if this now changes our position in the cap. And to jump ahead just a little bit, the Lay Finance Committee weighed in on all this because they met last week. And, you know, this is literally, this is blindsided. So they were blindsided, we were blindsided. So they're waiting on that information in an updated 5-year forecast. We talked about in the retreat on stepping up our advocacy. Literally, I think we had 2 days to try to see if there would be a line item veto. So
Correct.
DeWine was able to do a line item veto to save the people in Hunting Valley, but
Shows, yeah,
Orange.
not
Well,
this.
Orange.
Orange,
Hunting Valley was
So-
the one who
yeah, but then
wanted to stop paying.
Perhaps we can ask Scott to just go over for everybody, as we all know, a lot of people watch these at home. So could you take a minute and just explain the cap and all that? Because I think that that's worth us all understanding better.
Right, so the way that this current state funding formula works, depending on the level of growth of student population or decline, you can either end up, based on the state funding you should receive, either at a floor where you can't have less than that, you're on a guarantee, or you could be capped. And we are currently in the state funding formula capped at the level of dollars that we received in the previous year. So regardless of the ADM that we have, no matter how many more students we get, we're not going to see any additional state money. However, when the vouchers are given, they're at the bottom of the equation, and the voucher that goes out the door is for the full $6,000 for a high school student or $4,600 for an elementary or middle school student. But typically, if we weren't capped, if it were a true formula ADM situation, for every student, our state share is around 30%. So we're going to get a couple of $1,000s for each kid of the $6,000 that we would get if we were 100% funded, but the full $6,000 goes out the door. In a cap situation, we don't get our $2,000, but the full $6,000 goes out the door. So that's kind of the unknown in the whole equation right now that we have the wellness question answered, is based on all of these new applications and all these students now coming into our ADM, does that affect us being on the cap or not? If we come off the cap, rather than lose $6,000 a kid, we're going to lose $4,000 a kid for each of
And
these.
just to clarify for those, ADM stands for Average Daily Membership, which is basically our enrollment numbers on your ordinary day. There is a formula that they use, and they basically take attendance at our district a couple times throughout the year. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that is what is determined to be our enrollment, or in state speak, our average daily membership. Correct.
So to your point, we did pose that question of ODE as well, and the same representative did get back to me. So, ODE itself doesn't do a good job with that, but our regional people do. So Jack Harris responded in a second email to me, and he said, before the mathematics of the equation can be applied, we have to know how the cap will be applied to a district's calculations based on House Bill 166, which was the biennial budget bill. That's supposed to be explained to the ODE regional people in a meeting at the end of the month. The other factor that has to be known is the district's ADM for fiscal year 20, but that will not be known until the district generates an FTE detail report that includes new ed choice scholarships. So,
I think that's in October.
right.
Yeah,
So we've got a little bit of
towards the
time
end of
before we're
October.
going to have a definitive answer on that question. We know that we're going to lose anywhere from $1.4 million to $2.1 million. So there's, in any scenario, we're losing a significant amount of money based on these new vouchers. It's just a question of that swing. Is it the 1.4 or the 2.1? So worst case, conservative, we have the 2.1.
So we're at about an enrollment of around 5,200 students. Can we predict, so we're at the cap with 5,200 students. Is there a spot where we can say, if you go below here, you're no longer on the cap? If you go, is that how it works, or?
That is how it works.
Can we
However, what
predict
they're
that?
saying is ODE doesn't even know yet, based on what House Bill 166 says. They haven't applied the new
This is classic.
formula to
Right.
the
This is like when they decide what
Pass a
what
law without
proficient-
thinking through what the
Well,
repercussions will be.
It's what, they do this all the time with the high-stakes test scores.
Mm-hmm.
They don't decide before the test is taken what the appropriate levels will be. They wait until the scores come in, and then they decide what passing is, or expected or proficient is, and then periodically they decide it and then change their mind. So,
Well, and that's pretty much how they do state funding for schools always, and have all the years
Allison
I've
Bird
been in
is
it.
smiling over
You
there.
know,
She-
they do a here's what we have to give, and we're gonna back into a formula that works with what the budget
To
we
get
feel
the
we have
results that
available.
we have.
Okay, but we as a school board and the school district and our staff, I mean, we have been so fiscally conservative. We haven't been spending anything more outside our budget. We've been making cuts. I mean, we're kind of in a good place to absorb this. But think about the school districts that, I mean, you don't get close to the amount of money from the state to educate your kids. Right. So, and the margins are razor thin on what you have available. And here you are, you have the state legislature that makes these hugely impactful cuts that jeopardizes the health of every single public school district just so private school kids can get some relief in their tuition.
Yeah.
Okay? Because what happens is you have a kid in our district who now is having money taken away from them.
in order to
To give to
subsidize
somebody
private
else.
school education for someone else.
And we know the kind of kids that go to our kind of district. We know the kind of kids that go to the private school. I mean, that's just is so wrong.
It's targeting.
Well,
So
to your
Jer-
point,
well-
Jim, I'm sorry, Jim.
Oh, go ahead.
So yes, the fiscal year 20, we still had cash, so,
Right.
when we take this hit,
It's a
although it
huge
drives
hit.
us into a deficit in 21, we still have cash at the end of 20. But there are districts that were closer in 20. And so now suddenly, I spoke to one of them today, and I'm not going to name the district, but the treasurer said this is devastating. They had 200 Ed Choice vouchers that they did not anticipate because of this legislation was a surprise, and they are in some trouble.
Yeah, we need to identify all the school districts who are in the same situation we are now, and I think it's time we need to band together and start seeing what can be done.
So, we talked a little bit about this in our retreat. We have this
Yeah.
advocacy committee. I think we need to engage them and how to find a solution for this. And also, I think we
Well, I
need,
think it's not, I think it needs to move into a task force with this issue.
So I'm going to convene a task force to study this, and also the larger school report card challenges as well.
Because I think now we need to really focus on this issue.
I would agree with
Our
that.
taxpayers deserve our attention to this issue. We need to fight for the integrity of the tax dollars that they've entrusted us with.
I agree.
Well,
I mean, you don't pay your real estate taxes with an eye towards subsidizing private school tuition. You pay your real estate taxes because it's supposed to support that which makes our community a worthwhile place to live, which are, this local government and public education and libraries and parks, the things that we all benefit from.
I think we're not going to solve this
Yeah.
tonight. I think it's important to note that I feel we did a great job of stretching our levy an extra year. I'm sorry that the state has decided to penalize us in this way, but I think we need to keep our eye on it, and we need to see what can be done.
I just have one question. As far as the vouchers are concerned, can they continue to apply for vouchers? Is there a time where where we don't have to receive that, or do they continue throughout the school year at any time?
And this is probably a better question for Allison, she would know better than I, but the window is closed for July.
Okay.
And so it was the entire month of July that they could apply. So now it's mostly if there's an out-of-state student or someone coming into the district that there's a possibility that they can still apply for a voucher, but not, the students sitting in those chairs in those schools cannot just come and apply for a voucher.
As
That
the law is
window is
currently
closed.
written.
The way the law's currently
Right,
They
yeah,
can-
they changed it to make it easier to apply if you're coming in from out of state.
So Scott, do you need us to act on this, or is this just to update us?
I don't. This was an update,
Just
so I just wanted to make sure that we had it out there, that everyone understood that, you know, what the questions were that were still surrounding the forecast, and that we should have answers based on what ODE has sent me by the end of the month, so we should be able to bring you a forecast at the beginning of next month that would have some definitive numbers.
And the
we
next
would
time-
approve that.
Yeah.
Then that's when we have to approve the next forecast.
Yeah.
The next time you have to submit our 5-year forecast is in October, is that correct?
Yeah, although you all approve the forecast every month, typically, we don't submit the new forecast until to ODE, and we do that actually it's changed November and May.
Okay, November and May are the
Yeah.
two that go down.
Yeah,
to
that must go
be
down. You
filed,
can
yeah.
actually submit as often as you want, so we could send them down to the state, but often there's no change, so there's no reason
Highlighted
to
with
do that.
big marginal notes that saying, how dare you do this to us?
Well, we
I
could
don't
do
know
that
that
too,
that would
yeah.
have the
Absolutely.
impact we want.
All right, I'm
Okay.
going to move us on to the President's Report.
Yes,
There's
ma'am.
no other
Please do.
comments, discussions. I think we've covered that in as much detail as we can right now. So for the President's Report, first I'd like to congratulate the 14 summer school graduates who received their diplomas this evening at commencement. That happened right before this meeting. Very proud of our students. Second of all, I'd like to invite the public to come and meet our incoming superintendent, who's now our superintendent, Elizabeth Kirby, at some local spots. We had a really nice meet and greet last night at Whole Foods in University Heights, and we have some upcoming ones happening Thursday, August 8th at On the Rise. That's at 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. We have another one Tuesday, August 13th from 3 to 4:30 at Noble Elementary. We have another one Wednesday, August 14th from 3 to 4:30 at Boulevard Elementary. Also, we have kindergarten kickoffs coming up with Family Connections, and I want to thank Family Connections for hosting those in conjunction with us. Those are always great nights. So Fairfax and Noble are having theirs on August 7th. Canterbury's is August 8th. Garrity's is August 12th. Boulevard's is August 13th. Roxelle's is August 14th, and Oxford's is August 15th. All of those are from 6 to 8 p.m., and dinner is served for all of our families from 6 to 6:30 who attend those. Also, I'm proud to announce we have our middle school ribbon cuttings happening on August 14th. Monticello's will be at 11 a.m. and Rocks Mids will be at 12:30. George, I understand we got our occupancy permits, is that correct? We got the temporary ones?
Good.
And
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations, and as of right now, we are on time and on budget with these schools. So, congratulations on that as well. And also, I want to let people know that on August 14th, there's a BAC meeting, Bond Accountability Commission meeting, and Mario Mastandria is going to be doing an intro to solar, and the BAC is taking a look at solar panels and will make a recommendation to us on moving forward. So I plan to attend that one. I usually don't attend those meetings, but I am going to that night. And convocation, so the start of our school year will be August 16th, and our first day of school with students will be August 19th. So sorry I'm throwing out a lot of dates, but there's a lot of things going on. And then to my fellow board members, I want to call your attention to an email that we all received from Reaching Heights, Krista Hawthorne. She wanted to know if we're available on Wednesday, October 2nd from 6:30 to 8:30 at Delisle to participate in a school community communications event. So please get back with her to let her know. I know I plan to be there, and I believe Jim is planning to be there as well.
I replied that.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's the President's Report. Sorry it was a lot of dates and a lot of long-winded stuff, but there's a lot of good things happening and a lot of important dates coming up. So now, are there any board committee reports?
I just wanted to add 2 more dates because, you know, we need that. We have 2 new shining gems coming online, our 2 middle schools, and we have open houses for the community. We realize that only about 25% of our households currently have students in our schools. So we are opening up our schools so the rest of the community can come and see what they paid for. Monticello will be open on September 15th from 1 to 4, and Roxborough Middle will be open a week later on September 22nd from 1 to 4, and I encourage everyone to come see both because they are really something to see and something to be proud of.
Great. Any other board committee reports?
No.
How about unfinished business? Do we have any unfinished business? Any new business?
Yeah, right.
Correspondence or announcements?
We did receive an email recently from a parent about how to add school-sanctioned support groups at the middle school level for students exploring their sexuality or their gender identity. And I think at the high school, we obviously have these things, and the question is to, whether the administration can look into what might be appropriate for the middle school age kids, because obviously that's a time when most children are going through all sorts of turmoil, physical and mental, and that's a factor.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I assumed that this was in place in our middle schools, and if it's not, I wholeheartedly support the middle school administration trying to build a framework for these students and for the student body as a whole. It's not just about these students, it's about America, and it's about us embracing each other for the things that make us individuals. And as we look at the news, I think that these are the sort of thing is exactly the sort of thing that we need to do more of, and that is celebrating who each one of us is. And this is what we're great at. This is exactly who we are. And so I hope that we can find a way to do more. I was very grateful to get that email, and I think that we should make this a board priority to support this sort of expansion into the middle schools.
Well, we know that the middle school years are when a lot of children become more rigid in their views of themselves and the world, and that makes it particularly difficult for the children who don't fit into predetermined categories.
And I also,
and in elementary school, kids are much more willing to accept each other for who they are, and then all of a sudden in middle school it's like, well, no, we all have to fit into these boxes that we impose on ourselves or that we feel everybody else is imposing on us, and so those students need extra support.
two things. I did attend a session on this at NSBA a year ago, and it was probably the best session I attended at the entire conference. I think I still have some materials on that. If not, I can look up the superintendent who presented that session, and she had provided a whole bunch of materials on this topic. The other thing is, I believe that this is something that's covered under our equity policy.
Yes,
When we say all and every, that means all and every.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I believe that we have the equity policy on the books, and this is where we help apply it.
And I think that we've got a great model here at the high school that we can perhaps use as a starting point and decide what pieces of that would, can expand to the middle schools.
I'm in the process of my entry plan right now, and as a part of that, I am speaking with different stakeholders, different groups, parents, students, principals, teachers, community stakeholders as well, and also looking at how the equity lens lives and the issues that bubble up as a result of that. So this is something that I certainly will follow up with as I engage with the principals at the middle schools and the teachers and teams there too. This fits right with the one of the key goals in the strategic plan, and so this is something that we definitely want to explore. Make sure we have adequate support in place for students.
That's great. I was looking at the yearbook for the class of 2019 last night, because, of course, there are 2 copies of it sitting on my kitchen counter, and flipping through the pages and the photographs of all these young adults now who, some of whom I've known since they were teeny tiny. It's like you kind of remember the trajectory of their paths and where each one of these students has been. And if you can make it through middle school, in high school they really do blossom and they come into themselves and they leave us with a strong sense of who they are and what their potential is. And it's that middle school piece that's the killer. So,
Thank you for bringing that up.
you're welcome.
Any other correspondence and announcements?
I had a chance to attend the Heights Theater camp performance on Saturday. It was wonderful.
What did they do?
No, it was the Heights. They did 3 different productions.
Oh, okay.
3 different plays. Yeah, they had a trailer, and parents really helped out with building the sets, and it was really nice, and I just encourage us to continue to support it.
I heard it was wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm glad you went. Thank you.
It consisted of mostly our middle school students, between Monticello and Roxborough and Fairfax,
Excellent.
So let's keep supporting them.
Absolutely. All right. Any other correspondence or announcements? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Gaynor, will you call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Posh?
Yes.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes,
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
we are adjourned. Have a good night, everyone. Don't get soaked.
Yeah.